I am Glenn W. Worthington, and my wife Cindy and I are treasure hunters. The topic I want to discuss right now is Forrest Fenn's treasure. Now, Forrest Fenn is an eccentric multimillionaire who lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And when he was 80 years old, he decided to leave as his legacy a treasure chest and start a treasure hunt. And he didn't know if it would even be completed in his lifetime. But he took a small bronze box and filled it with gold nuggets, gold coins, jewelry, and gemstones, precious gems. And he hid it somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. And he said whoever finds it gets to keep it. So that people would know where to look, because the Rocky Mountains is huge. It extends all the way from northern New Mexico up into Canada. He wrote a poem and gave clues so you'd know where to hunt, to look for it. And the hunt started in 2010, and I didn't hear about it until 2015. My wife Cindy saw it on television, told me about it, and we said, we have got to investigate this. We got on the internet, we found the poem, we found out the hunt was real, the treasure was real, and yeah, it's true. Finders keepers. You got to keep the treasure if you found it. So I want to share with you 100 photos or more from our expeditions, our journey, our adventure, looking for genuine treasure in the USA. It's been a fun hunt. The reason I'm talking about it now, I've kept it secret for 5 years now. The treasure was just discovered, and they announced it. They said a man found it, but they didn't disclose his name. They didn't tell where he found it. They didn't even tell what state he found it in. But in about 2 or 3 days, it will be announced where it was found. And I want to go on record right now. This is June 9th, 2020, 8 o'clock in the evening. I want to go on record where I believe it will be found. Now, I'm not going to disclose it just yet, so hang with me, and I'll show you why I'm so convinced I know where it is. And why didn't I pick it up? Well, we made a few trips there looking for it, but just didn't happen to find it. But I believe it is there. But before we go any further, let's get into the poem and some of the history behind this, and learn the clues, and you can go on this hunt with me, okay? You won't even have to leave your home. We'll travel to New Mexico, we'll travel to Colorado, we'll follow the clues and see where they lead us. So let's start right now with a map, and I'm all about the maps. Cindy and I started a business 25 years ago called MAP, Mid-America Prospecting, and that's simply map. So we got you lined up to see what we're doing. This is the map and the poem. It reads, and the clues are in this poem, 9 clues. As I have gone alone in there, and with my treasure bold, I can keep my secret where, and hint of riches new and old. Begin it where warm waters halt, and take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far to walk. Put in below the home of Brown. From there it's no place for the meek. The end is ever drawing nigh. There is no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and water high. If you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down your quest to cease. But tarry scant with marble gaze, just take the chest and go in peace. So why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? The answer is already known. I've done it, tried it, and now I'm weak. So hear me all and listen good. Your effort will be worth the cold. If you brave If you are brave and in the wood, I give you title to the gold. So the man who owns the gold gives you title to it if you find it, if you're brave enough to search it out and find it. Later, over the years, Forrest Fenn has given more clues to help and specified some things and answered some questions and redirected people. And while I read through some of these, I'll have you look at a different map, very similar. But Mr. Fenn said, I can go right straight to the treasure chest. I can go back to it at any time. I don't think I could recover it by myself, I guess now that he's older. It is not in a mine. The treasure is not in a tunnel someplace. Where warm waters halt is not a dam. The treasure is located more than 8.25 miles north of Santa Fe, New Mexico. It is not on the top of a mountain, but it may be close. It is not hidden in Idaho or Utah, and it's not in Canada. It's not in a graveyard, so don't be digging up anybody's grave. It is located above 5,000 feet and below 10,200 feet. It's hidden in the mountains somewhere north of Santa Fe, New Mexico. The treasure is definitely in the Rocky Mountains. I hid the treasure in a place that is not especially difficult to reach. Physics tells me the treasure is wet. Until someone finds the treasure, they will not know for sure that they have discovered the first clue. The problem searchers make is that they don't dwell long enough on the first clue. If you can't find the first clue, you don't have anything. People driving down the street looking for a blaze because that's one of the clues, but you can't start in the middle of the poem and find the treasure. If I was standing where the treasure chest is, I see trees, I see mountains, I see animals, I'll smell wonderful smells of pine needles or pinyon nuts, sagebrush, and I know the treasure chest is wet. What surprises me a little is that nobody, to my uncertain knowledge, has analyzed one important possibility related to the winning solve. While it's not impossible to remove the blaze, it isn't feasible to try. And I am certain it's still there. The CE5 phrase on the treasure chest is of no value to searchers. There are many places in the Rocky Mountains where warm waters halt, and nearly all of them are north of Santa Fe. Look at the big picture. There are no shortcuts. The spot where I hid the treasure was, in my mind, from the time I first started thinking about the chase. It is special to me, and there was never another consideration. I was going to make it work no matter what. In my reverie, I often find myself stealing away to that place, and I will always consider it to be mine. When I am in the mountains or in the desert, the last place I want to be is on a trail. There isn't a human trail in very close proximity to where I hid the treasure. The clues did not exist when I was a kid, but of most of the places the clues refer to did. I think they might still exist 100 years from now. Many are giving serious thought to the clues in my poem, but only a few are in tight focus with a word that is key. There are several people that have deciphered the first two clues. I don't think they knew it, because they walked right on past the treasure chest. I think kids have an advantage finding the treasure. Don't ask me to explain that. No need to look for the treasure in a place where a 80-year-old man couldn't go with a 44-pound treasure chest full of gold and precious gems. So the treasure chest area covered the Rocky Mountains in Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, and northern New Mexico. It was like looking for one needle in a huge field full of large haystacks. After reading, studying, and trying to decipher the encrypted poem, Cindy and I decided to start narrowing down the area for the treasure chest search. We thought it wise to start at the beginning. The riddle poem said to begin it where warm waters halt and take it to the canyon down. We decided we needed to find where there were warm waters in the canyons. And this is a picture of Spencer Hot Springs. In the Santa Fe National Forest, there were 3 hot springs and 1 warm spring that pour into the canyons near Jemez Springs, New Mexico. We liked this area because it was accessible to the public, as we felt the treasure could not be hidden on private land, and this area was not a very long drive from Forrest Fenn's home in Santa Fe. So we reasoned he could have placed it there. And now here's another map we can look at too. This shows Jemez Falls, Spencer Hot Springs, where the picture of the guy was. Here's Battleship Rock. I'll mention that later. Here's Santa Fe. And so this is north of Santa Fe, although it is west-northwest of Santa Fe. Later in the story, too, this Fenton Lake State Park will come into play, as well as the Seven Springs State Fish Hatchery. But for now, let's focus on Spence Hot Springs and Jemez Falls, the waterfalls. We knew the treasure chest would not be hidden at the hot springs, but downstream from it, where the warm waters would cool and cease to be warm. The poem went on, "From there it's no place for the meek, the end is ever drawing nigh. There'll be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and water high." From that we figured you could not canoe to the spot where the treasure was hidden, but you had to walk as Forrest Fenn had when he placed his chest of gold and jewels there. We also deduced the heavy loads were large canyon rocks, and the water high meant it was hidden under a waterfall. We studied the topographical maps for the area and found a hiking trail that led to the waterfalls in a canyon we believed to be downstream from the hot springs. By early May of 2015, I was so convinced I knew where the treasure chest was hidden that I drove from our home in central Arkansas to our choice spot in northern New Mexico. Cindy had to work, so I took this trip alone. I confidently told her I would be back home in a few days with the treasure chest. The trip was 916 miles one way and took me 14 and a half hours to drive there. Then, after a long hike in the woods, this is what came into view. The trail started to descend so steeply into the canyon below that steps and a railing had been built to keep hikers from falling. So I knew I was going into a canyon. When I reached the bottom of the canyon, there was a rustic log bridge that allowed hikers to cross without getting soaking wet. True to the poem, I felt I definitely had followed the canyon down, and there were heavy loads all around. I did a lot of hiking and climbing to follow the trail to the waterfalls I had previously located on the map. But the views were spectacular. It was wonderful hiking there in New Mexico. Low humidity, fresh air, but I found the waterfall. The poem warned that it was no place for the meek and that I had to be brave the cold to get to the gold. In early May, that water was definitely cold, swift, and powerful. I had come this far and believed I was very close to picking up the treasure chest. So I plunged in under the cold waterfall. After thoroughly looking around under the torrent for several times, I decided the chest just was not under this waterfall. But there were more waterfalls in the area I needed to check. After checking all of them, I decided the chest was not hidden here. And besides, the water was flowing in the opposite direction from what I had assumed before leaving home. These waterfalls were not downstream from the hot springs, but rather upstream. After driving all those miles and hiking and swimming, I had to admit that this spot just did not fit the poem. In addition, where was the blaze? The poem said to find the blaze. Look down and the treasure would be there. It just wasn't here. So the only thing I could do at that point was to climb back out of the canyon and figure out a different plan. There's another waterfall I checked into and got it up under it. And then here's a closer view of that double waterfall. And there were logs jammed in there and everything. It was a little treacherous. And the water swirled around there. See, once you got through the wall of water, you could check in behind there without it pouring all over you all the time. But there was a pretty good flow of water going through. And like I say, it was fresh snow melt. But I walked all up and down that river. It was quite a trip through there. And I even checked these smaller waterfalls like this. This part of New Mexico is really beautiful, up in the Rocky Mountains. And here is another waterfall I had to get up under with that cold water running all over me. And I checked all around with my hands and with my feet. See, there's two waterfalls in a row there that dropped down. They all had to be investigated. I'd come that far and I had to check. But I eventually gave up and I walked up all these steps to get back out of the canyon and then a long walk back to my car from there. And I was soaking wet because I just plunged under the water in the jeans and shirt and boots I wore. This is Los Alamos, New Mexico. You can see right here on this building, Los Alamos Public Schools. This is a picture out of my motel room that night. I spent the night in a motel at Los Alamos, New Mexico. I studied the internet for more clues besides those that were in the poem, and this is what I found. The treasure chest is located above 5,000 and below 10,200 feet somewhere in the Rocky Mountains of Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, or New Mexico, and is more than 8 miles north of Santa Fe, New Mexico. In February 2015, Mr. Fenn said, I know the treasure is wet, but in winter isn't just about everything at high altitude in the Rocky Mountains covered with snow and thus wet? Mr. Fenn said, I know people have been within 200 feet of the treasure chest. The treasure chest measures 5 inches by 10 inches by 10 inches. It's made of bronze. Including its contents, the chest weighs 42 pounds. Mr. Fenn said he did not bury the treasure chest. He just hid it. And he did not hide it in a mine, a tunnel, or a cave. It is not in a graveyard, so don't dig up any old graves looking for it. It is not in an outhouse or associated with any structure, and where warm waters cease is not associated with a dam. Mr. Fenn said, I made 2 trips from my car to the hiding place, and it was done in one afternoon. And remember, he was 80 years old when he hiked there. Only go where you can imagine a man of that age would walk twice in one afternoon, carrying a total of 42 pounds of treasure. He also said, one thing is certain, when a person discovers that beautiful bronze chest and opens it for the first time and sees the bracelet with hundreds of rubies, emeralds, sapphires, and diamonds, and the 265 gold coins and hundreds of placer nuggets, he will be in awe. It is easy for me to predict the expression on his or her face. This is a list of just some of what is inside the lunchbox size chest. That alone is worth over $20,000. Fenn says there is over 20 troy ounces, 20 troy pounds of gold, a 17th century Spanish ring with a large emerald, a bracelet with 254 rubies, 6 emeralds, 2 sapphires, and a bunch of small diamonds, a historic bracelet with round turquoise beads, and a 2,000-year-old necklace from Colombia. Now I found myself in a Los Alamos motel 890 miles from home. Just that day I'd realized that my sure-thing theory on where the chest was hidden was wrong. I had just a few hours to solve the mystery of the hidden box, or I would need to drive back home empty-handed, and I knew that valuable treasure was nowhere near where I lived back in Arkansas. I called Cindy at home and we tried to figure out a good starting point for me for the next morning. We knew we should start at the home of Brown and work down the canyon. So where could that be? We checked the internet and discovered the Seven Springs Trout Hatchery farther north than where I had just searched. That could be the home of brown trout. And the springs were warm. They were warm water springs. All I had to do was go to the hatchery, follow the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk, as the poem said. I could see on a map that a creek ran down from the hatchery to a road. Let's see if I can find a map here. Nope, not yet. I could see on a map that a creek ran down from the hatchery and a road paralleled it. It seemed all I had to do was drive down that road until I found a good stopping spot. Then I could park and walk to explore the area to find the blaze and the treasure. The creek ended at Fenton Lake State Park, which had a dam. So we reasoned the chest was somewhere on public land between the fish hatchery and the state park's lake and dam. The next morning I drove to the fish hatchery and followed the creek down the canyon past a lot of private property. Then I found a place where I could park on the state park property north of the lake. I hiked all through the woods around the creek. I discovered a large group of aspen trees and figured this could be the blaze. Have you ever seen yellow aspen leaves in the fall? It looks like they are on fire, ablaze. I checked the base of every tree there, expecting to see the treasure chest just sitting on the ground in the woods. Echoing in my head were the poem's words, "If you are brave and in the wood, I give you title to the gold." But I did not see anything. After exhausting all of the possibilities in that area, I drove south to Battleship Rock. This was in the general area where I had searched the day before, but better fit the requirements of being downstream from the warm waters. This is where they would cease. I walked all of the hiking trails and streams in that area, but did not find the treasure chest or even a blaze. I searched every public access site along the Jemez River, including Deep Canyon hikes down to Rikon Fishing Site and Dark Canyon Fishing Site. I also followed the highway all the way to Soda Dam. There just was not a convincing spot for the blaze and the treasure chest. I called Cindy and explained I had given it my best try, but just could not locate the treasure. I drove home beaten by the mysterious riddle. Treasure hunting was nothing new to us. Cindy and I had left our home in Kansas City and moved to southwestern Arkansas so we could search for genuine USA diamonds. Just by searching part-time, we had unearthed 176 diamonds. Here is a photo of our two largest ones. The yellow diamond weighs 2.04 carats and is still in its uncut natural form. The brown one weighed 2.13 carats when I found it, but we had it cut to this 1.24 carat marquee. The Crater of Diamonds State Park has white, yellow, and brown diamonds. There's only 17% that are yellow. Here's a picture of, you can see white, yellow, and brown diamonds in this. This is the cover. We even produced a DVD called How to Find Genuine Diamonds in Arkansas, and it's our way of sharing tips and diamond finding secrets with other visitors to the Crater of Diamonds State Park when they come to treasure hunt in southwest Arkansas. One evening, Cindy and I were channel surfing, trying to find something interesting to watch on TV, when I stumbled across Expedition Unknown on the Travel Channel. And that episode's title was Finding Fenn's Fortune. And here is the contents of Fenn's treasure. That would be quite a fortune to find. See the jewelry and the gold nuggets, and there's full of gold coins in there as well. This is the map I wanted to show you early. The fish hatchery is here, and this is the trail of the creek that leads to Fenton Lake State Park and the dam. So the treasure had to be between here and the fish hatchery. So I searched all of that area thoroughly and didn't find it. So. Have you ever watched Expedition Unknown? We were channel surfing one night and found an episode titled Finding Fenn's Fortune. And we both immediately agreed to watch the show and see their take on the hunt. In that episode, the host, Josh Gates, first went to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and met up with two different families to follow their theories about where they believe Fenn's treasure was hidden. After checking out sites in Yellowstone National Park without finding the chest, Gates reasoned he did not believe Fenn traveled that far north to hide his treasure. Sometime in 2010, he had slipped away from his home in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and put the chest in its secret spot. So Gates figured it must be closer to Fenn's home. Cindy and I agreed with that. In our minds, that narrowed the search field down to the Rocky Mountains in Colorado or New Mexico. The host spent the remainder of the show. Here's a picture of Josh Gates with Forrest Fenn. Met him in his home in Santa Fe. But the host spent the remainder of the show searching with a woman near Taos, New Mexico, but they did not find the treasure chest there either. After I returned home from New Mexico empty-handed in 2015, more than a year passed before we attempted another trip to try to recover Forrest Fenn's elusive treasure. Since our 22nd wedding anniversary was coming up in late August 2016, Cindy asked me if we should take a trip to celebrate and wondered where would be a good place to go. I suggested we drive to Colorado and look for the treasure chest together. My adventurous, treasure-seeking wife loved the idea. This time we decided the home of Brown was Leadville, Colorado, because this was the hometown of the unsinkable Molly Brown. And Leadville is up here. See, this is where the Arkansas River begins, and it comes all the way down, and it goes across, this is Canyon City, and then it goes across Colorado, and this river is so long that it cuts through parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, It goes to Arkansas, all the way to the capital of Little Rock, Arkansas, and onto the Mississippi. But it starts right here by Leadville. And Leadville's elevation is 10,200, and that's the maximum Forrest Fenn said that it could be located. So we didn't want to start at the home of Brown. We'll begin it at the home of Brown and then go downstream from there, or follow the canyon down. So we believe the treasure was along the headwaters south of Leadville, Colorado. Narrowing down our search area some more, I suggested we begin at Nathrop, Colorado, because the Mount Princeton hot springs flow down Chalk Creek and empty into the headwaters of the Arkansas River. Let me see if I've got a map that'll show that better. This area is north of Salida, Colorado. Yeah, you can see it a little better here. Here is Buena Vista. Leadville is up here. Buena Vista down here. And then Chalk Creek comes from, the Princeton hot springs are over here. And it follows a creek here to Nathrop, south of Buena Vista. So these waters are also the home of brown trout. And the home of Brown could be Leadville, the home of the unsinkable Molly Brown, and it's in Brown Canyon. When you follow the canyon down, the canyon's name is Brown Canyon. So in 3 different ways, this area could be considered the home of Brown. So after we had studied, we booked a motel at Canyon City, Colorado for the entire week because we were not certain how far south of Nathrop our search would eventually lead us. But the canyons along Arkansas River ends there. It wouldn't be anywhere south of Canyon City, Colorado. It had to be north of there. So we knew we were in a good spot. So once in Canyon City, Colorado, we drove north to that small town of Nathrop, which is south of Buena Vista and north of Salida. From there, the poem was telling us to follow the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk. So we drove in our car south, turning east on every road there was to try to access the nearby river. They all led to dead ends on private land. Finally, there along the highway, Cindy saw a sign for Hecla Junction State Park and suggested we turn in there. That gravel road first led us uphill to a lovely view of Mount Antero. This is a little blurry map, but this is Chalk Creek. This says Nathrop. This is Brown's Canyon, say, and this is Chalk Creek. So the warm waters are here, and by the time they hit the cold water of the Arkansas River, they cool. So the warm waters cease right here at Nathrop.